I'm Adam Walker, a biometrics consultant, and this is the Pharma Prescribed podcast, where leaders, innovators, and hidden voices in healthcare open up. No sound bites, no spin, just raw insight, one prescription at a time. In an industry driven by data, protocols, and pressure, we rarely pause to ask the human questions. What drives us? What breaks us? And what truths live behind the titles we wear? Our guest today is Artem Adrianov, mathematician, strategist, risk-based quality management trailblazer. As co-founder and CEO of Integrity, he spent over 25 years transforming clinical trials through data intelligence and risk-based methodologies. With a PhD in mathematical modeling and an executive MBA from Cass Business School, Artem blends scientific rigor with business acumen to make trials safer, smarter, and more efficient. Since launching Integrity in 2013, he's led the development of platforms that optimize trial oversight, reduce monitoring costs, and elevate data quality. His work spans collaborations with Big Pharma, and his expertise covers spirometry, ECG, oncology, ePROs, and centralized monitoring. A speaker and educator, Artem has presented at numerous global conferences and co-authored the definitive guide to RBQM for clinical researchers. His company's training arm, My RBQM Academy, has educated over 1,500 professionals from more than 400 organizations, setting the standard for RBQM implementation worldwide. Whether modeling risk or mentoring the next generation of trial leaders, Artem is reshaping how the industry thinks about quality, reliability, and patient safety. Artem, it's a pleasure to welcome you to Pharma Prescribed today. How are you doing?
Thank you, Adam. I'm very pleased to be here. Yeah, I'm great. I'm feeling great. Thanks a lot for asking. And I just finished my regular 4 days fasting, which I do every quarter. And that gives me some clarity in mind, gives me a booster in energy. And I hope I could share this energy with all our listeners today.
That's fabulous. And I must firstly congratulate you on that. How have you been for the last 4 days? Have you been grumpy or have you been clear and thought-provoking? What has it done for you?
So I'm not doing it for the first time. So I'm quite aware about all the cycles of the body, which usually you go through. And it's, of course, it could be compared with the waves when you feel either very energetic or very weak for a while, but it's normal. And actually, when you go through it, you can unfold your hidden potential, which you haven't even been aware about.
That's absolutely fabulous. The longest I've ever gone fasting for is 24 hours, and that's a religious fast that I follow every year. But as I mentioned before we came onto the recording, I've been doing intermittent fasting for probably a year, 18 months, and have found that to be really, really helpful to my day-to-day activities, digestion, just general sharpness. Is that what you're finding?
I was very curious about this when I heard that Socrates has done it many centuries ago for clarity of mind. And in fact, he was explicitly sharing these benefits. What you mentioned, health benefits are, of course, was one of the motives as well for me. But clarity of mind that's what I definitely enjoy. And in my day-to-day activities, in my day-to-day work, that's super, super beneficial. So I have for sure, I've been increasing productivity through that, making actually or fulfilling double more tasks in the same period of time. Focus has increased and other things. And that's why, again, I've decided already several years ago to do it regularly. My record was for now 5 days, but it's not by far not the longest, so to say, that was recorded. As far as I remember, the world record was 380 days. Yes.
My goodness, that must have been a hungry old time, and they must have got an awful lot of work done. Thank you for the insight, and I'm sure we could do another podcast on that one. But for those of our audience who are not familiar with you, Artem, obviously when I opened up the podcast, I gave you a little bit of background. Is there more that you'd like to expand upon around Integrity and how you came to be here today?
Yeah. Adam, first of all, I want to say that Integrity is definitely not me. I'm staying and enjoying the company of wonderful leaders, and it's really my pleasure to actually co-design a company together. So originally, and many years ago, it's actually 12 years ago, I was considering what would be the mixture of everything I really love in my life. And it was medicine, it was data management or data science, it was mathematics and solving challenging problems. And actually, when it came together in one of my dialogue with one of our product manager at ERT that days, who said, you know what, Artem, there is no really good fraud detection mechanism in the industry. And fraud was a really challenging problem. In fact, it remains still in pharma as a challenge, which really few people are talking about. And I thought that's worth of exploring. I thought that this is definitely something which kind of raised my curiosity. I was starting to look around in other industries, how they solve it, reading books from finance, for example, where there's a big topic, looking around and again, finding exciting methods, which actually we apply, in fact, in Integrity right now as well. For example, Benford's law or the algorithms which detect the digit repeatability, and they all can unveil and show, so to say, certain fraudulent cases. However, it's just one of the risks we're talking about. There are many other risks in clinical research, and each of them really requires its own dedicated approach. So the more I explore this exciting world, the more I thought that there's a kind of a real potential for a company. So my team and I, we exited together and started an independent data quality bureau many years ago. And the name actually came out of the mission together, so to say. It's clinical cyber integrity, so to say. So it's mixture of everything: medicine, mathematics, engineering, and risk management, or integrity, which is a bigger kind of term overall. And since day one, in fact, we're focused on this topic, building more and more algorithms in some workflow-driven software, and then allowing and helping many, many pharma companies, in fact, to de-risk their clinical trials in a consistent, practical, and very measurable way, so that they can really see the advantages of doing this systematically.
That sounds fabulous. And having met you now in person, as we did at the conference, the AI conference in Frankfurt a couple of months ago, what I said to you then, I'll maintain and repeat again, is your eye for detail, but also I think the sweet spot between medical science and the mathematical modeling that you come from is very clear. When I heard you speak on the stage, it resonated really, really loudly that you had a really lovely cross-section of skills that lent themselves very well to this particular area. And of course, you know that, but as someone who hadn't met you before and hadn't heard you speak, it was very, very clear that you absolutely knew the minutiae about which you were describing. And is that really underlying everything that you do? Is it important to you to be involved in the detail?
I definitely feel still that, again, we are not so big as a company that I can remain, let's say, completely abstract from what is happening within kind of day-to-day life. First of all, it's also not my management style. On the contrary, I do prefer interfere and also control literally every step. However, at the end of the day, it's not about pointing that how it could be done, rather removing the roadblocks for people who are involved, allowing them to show their potential. And that was that's DNA of Integrity. From the very beginning, we started an internal leadership program, for example, and we named it a Young CEO program. Why? Because actually, young generation would like to test themselves also in CEO shoes, and we allow them to experiment. And in fact, compared to classical MBA programs, for example, where you mostly kind of read theory and try to understand how it would be in practice, here we have an opportunity to test the ideas right away. Yeah, to experiment, to run the projects with the real timelines, with the real promises, decide on the very simple, important strategic decisions. So to this group of young CEOs, I'm sending sometimes an important decision that they need to take and showing all the details and saying, okay, will you sign this contract? Yes or no? Tell me the decision. That's exciting opportunity for them to experiment, without big risk, of course. That's all with the culture which Integrity is about. So Integrity is actually very much about allowing the young employees and young colleagues to be a bit more than what they were hired for, to grow, to show their potential, and continuously evolve together with the company. Yeah, that's what I was
That sounds
passionate
fantastic.
about.
It's the sort of thing that at the beginning of my career would have been really, really helpful because, as I'm sure you experienced, I certainly did, that you learn through doing, but actually you learn through your mistakes, don't you? And to your point, you make mistakes and there are risks associated with that. You don't always make the right decisions, certainly. And there comes a point later on in life, more generally, where you recognize the mistakes that you've made and perhaps how you don't make them once again. And that's about pattern recognition, isn't it? But it sounds like this young CEO program, you allow people to learn through doing, but without the big risks and without the financial cost of making the wrong decision.
Not only that, I mean, we learn as well as leadership team who are involved into the training of these young CEOs continuously. So first of all, it's a big motive for us to refresh our background information, how everything is happening, how companies are run today, because it changes as well. But also we learn to see things from different angles, and sometimes really unexpected decisions, and the decisions which, for example, our leadership team wouldn't take enough courage to do. These young CEOs, in fact, go in this direction, and it turned to be also one of the most, for example, profitable branch or idea for the company. So first of all, we are ourselves very encouraged, very engaged to observe this happening. But also for our colleagues, it's a huge booster of motivation. They invest, by the way, their private time. We provide also psychologists to work with them and to go through this certain transformation. We kind of make journaling with them through a whole period. It's about 2 years program. So through whole period, so to see this also evolution. And again, that brings fruits which you couldn't even imagine as a company, because whenever you hire a manager, so to say, into the company who come out of other industries or companies, they bring their own culture. This culture starts to shake. It actually shifts, so to say, the values, even if it's not noticeable in the beginning. And if you allow it to grow for young leaders inside of the company, then these values get cemented, in fact, into the actions, into the decisions in the future. So that's what we definitely observe, what we definitely see. And part of our strategic decision, was continuously promote our internal employees rather than hiring, so to say, big management from outside.
I love that. That's really encouraging. And I know we have a lot of listeners who are new to the industry. Certainly, I support the alumni at the University of Greenwich and a number of other institutions. And I think what you're describing is really how people can get into the industry. And you invest in these people for at least 2 years. They're already permanent employees, and you're giving them the opportunity to learn on the job effectively, like an apprenticeship. Is that correct? Have I understood that correctly?
Yes. Correct. The program is actual big investment, of course, from the company as well. We invite guest speakers. We invite founders of different companies to speak about their path. Managers from big pharma, mid pharma, they show their kind of secrets they learned in their lives. And all that remains as a DNA, again, here in the footprint of DNA and within the company. And all this contributes to the evolution of these young leaders step by step. And of course, it's a slow but rather fruitful process. And again, I know and I understand that it's probably not very much popular among, for example, other companies who are willing to have immediately results visible for, I don't know, from their founding private equities or VCs. In the contrast, Integrity is founder-owned company still. So everything we do is dedicated to long-term success. And this also relates to our customers and our employees. So these are the most important assets that company has.
It's incredibly impressive, Artem. If we have people that are interested in this program, how would they find out about that particular program? Is this something where you have to know someone who knows someone, or is it advertised on Integrity's website? How would people find out about that opportunity?
That's a good question. So every employee at Integrity is allowed to apply a certain period of a year, and there is a certain process. They need to record a video and describe why they would be the best fit for this program. And there is a committee who actually selects out of all the applications the best ones, with whom we are actually do additional interviews. For those who are not selected, we do additional discussions as well, again, explaining why it's not the right fit right now. So of course, we have limited number of seats in the program for sure. However, that's a continuous iterative process. And again, those who are not able to join now, for example, could join in 2 years. We think elsewhere, and this is again very new as we speak, I would think that might be this program is also would benefit if there will be some participants outside of the company. A very radical idea, however, presumably it will be definitely additional benefit. Yeah, so it's not only the cohort of employees who know how our process work, but some outsider would probably give another flavor of maybe additional ideas. So we experiment and think about it for the next iteration, which will be at the end of the year.
That's a really interesting point. Of course, to mention the word, that comes with risks, doesn't it? You open your doors, you share your IP. Of course, you're covered by NDAs or CDAs, but I would imagine that having a fly on the wall that can look in outside of the goldfish bowl and see it for what it is, perhaps, could also reap enormous dividends in the fact that it's very rare that you get people to come in and actually tell you the good or the bad that they see immediately. Usually it's a client situation, isn't it? And everyone's very polite and we'll stand behind our job titles and whatever. But I would imagine that would be a real opportunity to innovate and change, particularly if there is an open policy around sharing information and sharing the truths, shall we say, around the what's the elephant in the room type question. What's the thing that you saw that no one else is seeing? What are we all colorblind to?
Indeed, exactly. That's what provokes us to think about this approach. And yeah, hope that more information will appear near to the end of the year on our website. And again, hope if somebody from listeners of this podcast would be interested, I'm sure that our HR, for example, would be happy to already accept some sort of applications.
That sounds absolutely fascinating. So if I could just on one final point around that particular thing, where did the idea come from? How did this get dreamed up? Was it an experience that you'd had somewhere else or someone else had come up with this idea? Because this is quite innovative and very unusual in our industry. It's very conservative by very nature. And we generally tend to stick to process. We stick to what we know. Is that fair?
Yeah, first of all, one of the ideas or part of this idea actually evolved from experience of my wife, who was involved in a young leadership program at Eli Lilly, which is also, by the way, very famous by promoting internal employees and actually building and developing leadership inside of the company. Maybe part of it is actually explains the successes of this company in the recent years. Another inspiration I received when I read articles about Johnson & Johnson. In fact, this is the company also which is focused on continuous promotion of internal employees rather than hiring management from outside. Exactly from this reason that they don't want to disturb the culture. merging together and thinking again, what would be our path, Integrity's way. We came to this idea. And again, the first cohort is already finished. And we were just blown by results, frankly speaking. So we've got management who are motivated, who are well experienced, who are understanding the domain, who are really pushing forward. And now the company is actually feeling this around in various departments. Yeah, so and that's on itself particularly exciting to observe.
Incredibly impressive. And thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate the fact that you've been so honest and open about that, because it's very rare that companies will come onto a podcast and talk about their DNA. This is effectively your DNA, it's Integrity's DNA, isn't it? It's the thing that makes you you as a company, as an organization. It underpins everything that you do and the interesting work that you are performing. But also, I think it gives an insight to our listeners as to the real deep company culture and the drive from the top down, from yourself through your leadership team and your next generation of leaders that are coming through the organization. As we know, bringing in people from outside can be very expensive, it can be very timely, but actually if you're building that from the ground up, you're building very firm foundations upon which the organization can then grow. And my sense is, and maybe you can elaborate on this, what kind of retention rate are you working to now?
Retention rate is incredible. In fact, we are very proud, in fact, about our particular retention rate. I mean, it's around 2-3%, if I'm not mistaken, in the recent time. At the same time, again, you mentioned about the cost. So again, this is a different allocation of the cost if you think about it. Again, the approaches which usually companies are taking are more short-term driven. And in the particular of Integrity, we have the luxury to think long-term, which is on itself indeed a luxury. Yeah. So in the modern world. And if you think long-term, only by means with this mindset, you have the ability to achieve something incredible, something which really turns the industry, something which really hits the ground, so to say. That's actually allow or make something ground shaking, so to say. And this is what, again, happening step by step. And of course, you need a lot of patience and resilience growing through that. However, I believe that through recent years, we were already to demonstrate and learn about resilience and about patience. And that's actually what helps us to build something which we really believe in.
Yeah, that's powerful. It's powerful and it sounds tangible as well. So with regards to Integrity, what is the size of the company these days, and what is that looking like for you at the moment? What's your plans for the next couple of years as far as growth goes?
Yeah. So currently we have 50 employees. In fact, considering that we are not backed up by any VC or private equity fund, so it's all self-funded, means that also that in kind of whenever it's possible, we do build rather software that works, not hiring additional employees, so to say. And that's actually part of our engineering engine, so to say, which is in fact also incredibly scalable. Managing for about thousands of studies with these 50 employees is something, again, tells about the engineering complexity in background. So where we're heading, in fact, we're staying now in front of the large transformation for the industry, partly driven by the regulatory ICH 603, which knocks our doors or already kind of in our doors, partly because of the global trends, data analysis, AI, making agentic decisions, creating smart solutions which can really reduce routine work. Yeah, which can help people their job in a smarter way. That's where we're staying. We're staying in front of a large revolution, if you want, kind of rather striking word. However, this is indeed what I really believe in. And it's a kind of like a perfect storm situation when industry, on the one hand side, has to evolve, has to change, has to do transformation. And on the other hand side, industry, which in fact is forced to change by the regulatory shift. with this, again, we expect rapid growth within the next 2 years. So 250, 300 employees in terms of the staff, for example. But also revenue-wise, we expect multiplying of the revenues to what we have at the moment. And we are prepared for that. In fact, what we're building this and solutions and scalability for last years and testing and experimenting in large settings and with the large companies, how to make the solution scalable. At a certain point, scalability and ability to create benchmark evaluations, create and industry insights will define the future of RBQM industry or quality by design industry, if you want. So this is where we're moving as a whole pharma. And that alone will open the new opportunities for pharma to benefit from analysis of the data that they have already in place. They possess already.
I'm curious. It was something that we talked about at the recent conference we were both at. Around AI, you made mention of it. What do you think is the biggest challenge currently facing clinical research and drug development at the moment in and around that space, in and around the AI chat that's happening at the moment?
Let me give you an example, provide an example. So imagine you would fly with the airplane, and this airplane would be managed by pharma, let's say, somewhere from London to New York. You would fly 10 times. 8 out of 10 times would come 2 days later than you would plan. 2 of these flights will crash completely. And the price that you would pay in the beginning would continuously double. So this is the situation we are facing right now in the pharma. And is it a challenge? Yes, it is. Is there any room of improvement? It's a huge room. Look in the other industries, how they managed, in fact, for example, also with risk management, how they moved forward, how secure it is to fly now from London to New York. One of the disasters would come once out of 5 million flights. This is actually what we need to focus on to improve in pharma. If one study out of 5 million studies would fail, due to different reasons, I think then our mission would be achieved. But again, that's a long path ahead of us. And this is also so exciting because the potential of improvements is so large, is so big. And on various scales, where we can talk about recruitment challenges, we can talk about data quality challenges, we could talk about transparency and conflict of interests within clinical trials. And that's actually what we're improving step by step. So I compare Integrity to Bloomberg for pharma. So this is what we want to achieve. We want to get a similar scale of insights, of depth of the insights for clinical trials. We want to share it transparently with sponsor companies and with CROs. We want to create an environment where they can not do some finger pointing, rather do some sort of mutually oriented, conclusion-oriented decision-making environment. Decisions which are taken with risks in mind. This is what RBQM is about. This is what quality by design is about. So we are just in the beginning of this process, as you might already understand.
It's a fascinating insight, and I love that analogy around the airplane. It's, the black box thinking is something that comes to mind as soon as you were talking about that. But I think you made the point around perfect being the enemy of the good, really. So what we hope is for patients to be saved for all times and patient well-being not to be put under risk in any clinical trial, in any drug that's been administered to humans. But I think to your point, it's around the scalability, isn't it? It's around the speed of action. And right now, my sense is that we are in a very fast-moving environment where those that can adapt and be adaptable, like the way you're describing Integrity is, they will be those that are at the front of the queue for the next round of opportunities. That's my sense. Is that fair?
reminds me about Darwin's quote. He said, not the smartest will survive, not the strongest, but the most adaptable. I believe in the pharma space, again, this is definitely the case as well in the pharma companies. So we see continuous change of environment as a theory of evolution. We see that regulatory changes, we see political influence, we see coronavirus sometimes hit whole world. And we see that different trade wars appear between countries. It's all influences the way how we plan and fulfill clinical trials. And in this challenging environment, in fact, it's extremely difficult, as you said, to maintain patient safety, but also not only patient safety, but also to reduce their burdens, which they feel it's extremely difficult. Being able to, first of all, understand the changes, take the conclusions in the right time, with the right weight, so to say, take the actions about these conclusions. That's what, in fact, where RBQM is definitely very handful, very handy. So this is where we see already wonderful case studies with our customers. This is where we see also the tangible, practical improvements in there for patients as well, for sites. So it's way more transparent, understandable for them how to work, what quality criteria pharma expects. In many cases, that leads also to a more compliant, more predictable successes of clinical trials.
It's a great answer. And you've reminded me around the point that we started off where you were talking about your own fasting. And I was going to ask the question around, what you're learning about yourself through this entire process, because clearly you've been doing this a very long time and you're getting better and better and smarter and faster and surrounding yourself with better people. Is that? I think that's what I'm hearing. What is it that you've learned about yourself through this entire career that you've had to date, and no doubt, will take you forward?
First of all, I've understood that I should not understand and really go in everything. So to say, I shouldn't be good in everything. So far, what is more important is to create a great team around the idea, so to say, around the vision that is clear to everybody. That is, again, achievable and looks achievable, that looks meaningful, that looks understandable and really changing, so to say, the world. And step by step, this team can show wonderful results. These results will be visible also within the business. These results will be visible in the industry as well. And kind of that's one first of kind of this lesson which I've learned compared to the early days when, again, as a founder, you do literally everything. You do bookkeeping, you do hiring, you do marketing and everything. So again, that was already a certain point a mistake. However, again, I think we have quite clearly understood at a certain point that's not the right path. Another big lesson, I believe, is also that what really matters is quality in everything. So quality in ideas, quality and the implementation, quality in the delivering the value to a customer. Where cutting corners, in fact, by some other companies would lead again to a short-term benefits, but not long-term excitement. Therefore, our best kind of relationships with customers are really those relationships which started step by step without big jumps, but companies were able to adapt to the methodology, to the way of thinking, to the way of implementing and visualizing and seeing that and understanding that. The step-by-step approach is actually turned out to be way more efficient than a big bang approach compared, again, which sometimes is applied when, big manager decides, okay, we want to do it for all clinical trials right away. And that turns out to be usually a disaster, particularly large organizations. Why? Because employees are not buying in, so to say, this decision. They are not into that. Sites are lost, in fact. And sometimes we hear funny stories that sites understand RBM like reduced based monitoring. Yeah. So this is something, why? Because they don't see CRAs coming. Nobody explained to them that something has changed. And sometimes nothing was changed, in fact, as well, which is, again, one of the big pitfall of the whole risk-based approach. Yeah. Doing some sort of under RBM flag, reduced monitoring without any other adjustments. So long story short, again, this path of 12 years was literally a continuous path of self-reflection, understanding, lessons learned, which was full of, again, excitement wins, but also dramatic shakings. And similar, like, again, with the fasting, I'm glad that you brought this analogy. In fact, for companies, sometimes it is useful also to be for a certain period of time in a kind of fasting mode and see, and then reflect and understand, okay, are we delivering the best value on the market? Are we providing the best services? And that alone, again, helps to improve.
Thank you for sharing that, Artem. That's absolutely brilliant. And I think a really nice way to then move into the quick fire round, which is how I like to conclude our discussion. So, what is the one piece of advice you would give to your younger self?
To my younger self, never go into entrepreneurship. I would say, if I may allow, always believe in what you're doing, despite of any other opinions around, and continuously try to be better today than you were yesterday.
Excellent. What are the 3 top qualities you value most when building a team?
Very good question. I really value a passion around what we do. And I always ask, for example, the young students who join our team, what their parents were doing, were they involved, for example, in medicine so far or in pharma so far, why they decide to go into this kind of mixture of different sciences. And we do not hire if people are not really passionate about this particular kind of mixture. And it's a different type of, if you would do something for pharma or develop some websites, I don't know, for gaming industry, you have to be a bit crazy about it in the pharma space. When we see, for example, how patient survives from oncology, and it really, you see the whole lives of, say, of a patient on one screen, it's really something deep going, and it's really something incredibly motivating, because it's not just a curve, it's not just a graph, it's a whole story behind. And it's actually, if we are part of this story of changing life for somebody, making some therapy more accessible, quicker accessible, and a higher quality accessible, I believe it's worth of existing as a company and as a human.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that, and thank you for your openness. What is your favorite thing or your greatest passion outside of your work? It sounds like you're very busy, but I'm sure there are things that light your fire outside of work. And what would they be?
I passionately play piano. I frankly speaking, I have a wonderful grand at home, which I really admire. And it is a kind of, sometimes some colleagues make jokes that I like everything with keys. Yeah. So keyboard and this definitely, which helps me to relax, helps me to think about something different in a different way. And I hope that, again, I could bring some sort of music to my kids as well. And they are also feeling the same way, excited.
Dare I ask, what's your favorite piece of music that you like to play most often?
I do prefer to play my music, let's say, put this way. And
Okay.
one of the songs, so to say, kind of which rings with this thought, is a song of Frank Sinatra, "My Way," and this is very much aligned again with certain decisions in life. Yeah, I do prefer to do it my way. And however, again, we are all staying on the shoulders of giants. And I recently heard how music of Bach was played in a jazz mode. And that's really is fascinating. You're just adding syncopas to Bach and it sounds like jazz. Incredible.
So I really appreciate that. Thank you for sharing again. And I also love live music. I'm not musical, but I love music. And I go to a lot of live music events. I'm just going to drop it in conversation that I happened to go to see Oasis at Wembley. Now, some people would say that's not music. For my generation, I was 20 years old listening to that for the first time. And there is a collective effervescence in a stadium or an arena where people are singing the words. You will know what I mean. And humming along to a tune is the same principle, isn't it? But music really, really touches me as well. So I really appreciate that. And finally, what's your number one golden rule in life and business, Artem?
Yeah, stay integrity, obviously. And that's was actually part of the name choice. And integrity is, in fact, doing something correct when nobody looks around on you, so to say. That's, I would say, one of the golden rules I definitely appreciate, and in business and in my private life.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Well, I think it's fair to say we've had a really enlightening insight into your world, Artem. I mean, you've taken us through the background of integrity, your mathematical modeling background, and how that intersects with medicine, and really the brilliance with which you're leading an organization differently to most others. So I can only thank you for coming here today and sharing that story, because I think many of our listeners will learn from that, but also I hope it resonates with many, many people. So as I say, I'd encourage you to continue doing what you're doing, because it's clearly reaping dividends. And if any of our listeners and our audience would like to make contact with you, what's the best way to connect with you?
Yeah, first of all, I'm open for connections over LinkedIn or our website. That's probably the kind of the classical paths, but I'm continuously visiting different conferences like DIA, Scope, or similar. Think, and I believe that it's actually, there are multiple opportunities to join and to see more about integrity, our team, and again, shake hands and exchange ideas. And we're always welcoming various experts from outside to do some co-presentations or joint sessions, co-present also in the conferences. I also do research in different topics actually, which are relevant for RBQM and quality by design. Yeah, if somebody has an idea, drop me a line in the LinkedIn, and again, we're happy to discuss that.
Okay, thank you so much. And the website address, just for our audience as well, is it integrity.com?
Yes.
Lovely. Once again, sincere thanks for joining us on Pharma Prescribed today. It's been an absolute delight to welcome you, Artem, and I look forward to continuing the conversation at a later date. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Adam, for your kind words, and in fact, wonderful session together. Thanks a lot.